Hey guys, so I'm doing a second video today, just because my son is being exceptionally quiet, knock on wood. That wasn't actually wood, but it was the closest thing to wood that I had in my room, which is like a marble end table. Anyway, I've been planning on doing this video since I made a purchase a couple of weeks ago, and this purchase just got me thinking about some things. Now, I'm just gonna do sort of a slight disclaimer at first, like, well, if I give a disclaimer to people under 18, that's gonna kind of eradicate the point of this video. But, just suffice it to say, if you are not one that is acquainted with, sexual topics or anything of that nature, or that makes you uncomfortable or whatever, you might want to click onto a different video. So, with that little disclaimer being said, moving forward, the purchase that I made was after I watched a video, and I'll link her channel below. There's actually a couple videos that I watched, and no, they are not that type of video. It was two other YouTubers that I watch. One is Trisha Paytas, and the other is Sarah Ray Vargas. I think I'm saying her last name correctly. If I'm not, I'm sorry. But I will try and link their channels below. And they were both doing, not at the same time, but they had both done, like reviews, not reviews, like haul, well, Trish did a review. I don't think Sarah did. Sarah did just like a haul video because the places that they were buying things from was AdamandEveToys.com. If you're not familiar with them, they are basically a sex toy slash novelty, like little cute sexy outfit kind of website. And they are awesome. No, this video is not sponsored. I am not sponsored by anybody, and I don't even have enough subscribers for anybody to notice me to sponsor me. But they're just a really awesome company. And so I was just watching the things that they had purchased, or I think in Sarah's case they had sent it to her because she had bought from them before, and they like sent her some stuff. I think it was for free. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was for free. And they wanted her to just like do a haul of it or do a review of it, just, you know, see how she liked it. So she was just like showing all the cool stuff that she got. And I was just really listening to her and thinking, you know, this type of thing, I wish that maybe people were doing this when I was like 14 and 15, and I just wasn't, you know, clicking on those type of videos, because at the time I was extremely shy, extremely reserved. Even though at 14 I had already lost my virginity, I just was it was a very taboo subject. Like, sex was just so, you're not supposed to talk about that. Like, unless unless you're around your girlfriends or whatever, and y'all are having like a, let's sit around and talk about boys with mud masks on our faces and our hair up in curlers kind of thing. But, you know, just to openly talk about sex, or talk about, you know, different, you know, sexual experiences that we like, or the biggest thing that, like, I've noticed, and I'm not one to call the sexist card very often, but I do feel like guys kind of have this liberty, sexually speaking, to give themselves pleasure, and that's just like normal for men. Whereas when women talk about that, or when we express the fact that we do it, and if there's any gentlemen watching right now, yes, we do it, whether we tell you about it or talk about it or not. Most of the time, even if we say we don't do it, we have, or we're probably doing it as we're sending that text message to you. Like, it happens, okay? We do it, probably more than you do. We probably think about sex more than you do. We just keep it under wraps a lot better, and we don't have something protruding from between our legs to give away the fact that we are thinking about sex. So, in our case, it's more taboo, it's more like improper. And I feel like it's been that way for centuries. Like, if you're a little bit of a history buff like me, and you look back at, like, not ancient, but, like, back in the 17 and 1800s, like, when the women were wearing the corsets and all that kind of stuff, like, women weren't supposed to, like, approach their husbands. Like, you wouldn't be stoned to death for it, but, like, it was thought to be uncivilized or unladylike for a woman to approach her husband and ask for sex. Or, you know, at one point it was actually thought that it was impossible for for a woman to actually enjoy sex the way that a man did, like actually having an orgasm. That was thought to be physiologically impossible. Like, the things that they believed back then were insane. And one thing I found really, really funny, I decided one day, because I think of weird stuff, like I really do, I think of weird stuff. And so I'm sitting there, and I decide to Google, where did vibrators originate from? And so they actually originated from a time when hysteria was thought to be a common, like, widespread, what was it called? Syndrome. It wasn't necessarily a disease per se, but it was like characterized by a specific, well, not even specific, like a wide range of symptoms. If a woman had repeated headaches, she had hysteria. If she had digestive problems, she had hysteria. If she was bloated, she had hysteria. If she was moody and just in a pissy mood, she had hysteria. Like, everything for a woman was hysteria. And so their treatment for that was basically to say that, well, what they basically thought hysteria was, it was basically thought that a woman's uterus had the ability to travel through her body and cause ailments in different areas of the body. And when it did this, obviously, you know, you'd get headaches, you'd get mood swings, you'd have digestive problems, whatever. And it was thought to be because of a lack of having sex. But this was not sexual. This was not, like, it wasn't a matter of that you didn't have enough satisfaction in the bedroom, because it was thought that you couldn't have satisfaction in the bedroom. Like, that was just a job you had as a woman to produce heirs. That was not, it was just to say something along the lines of your uterus wasn't being put to good enough use, basically, and it was driving you insane. And, which in a sense was probably true, because we're ladies. We know. We know what we need. But anyway, so they invented, in the first place, before they invented vibrators, doctors, like legit medical doctors that went to school, thought that it was appropriate to come to a woman's home and basically finger her until she had her... I don't know why I'm doing this. Like, it's a big explosion. Well, it can kind of feel that way. But until they had basically had an orgasm that they thought was impossible for them to have. And so that was actually something that doctors did. It was a very routine thing. They'd come in, they'd do their thing there, you know, in a separate... And it just boggles my mind that these were freaking married women. Okay, these were married women. Their husbands were probably right downstairs, or like right across the hall in their study area or whatever. And you can't tell me that these women didn't make an ounce of noise at all. Like, the husband's just in the other room listening to his wife moaning and screaming and yelling and all this and that, and the doctor's in there like, how? What? I'm sorry. I'm just like, how is this okay with you? For your general family doctor to come in and shove his hands up your wife's hoo-ha and for him to get her off, but you're too dang lazy to do it? Like you can't tell me that everybody believed that. Like, you can't. I'm sorry. So anyway, they decided to invent vibrators. Now, originally these were big electrically powered things that were only in doctors' offices. Like, they were freaking like ginormous big things that basically the woman was hooked up to. It was plugged into the wall. Some of them even sent off electrical charges, like some of the modern ones that we have now can send off electrical charges, and that's supposed to stimulate pleasure, stimulate blood flow, and all that sort of thing. And so that was where that started. And then that kind of became too expensive, too inconvenient, and so, plus there were some women that, if I'm not mistaken, ended up getting actually electrocuted by this stuff, so they had to kind of cut that out. And so now, you know that shower massager that you have in your bathroom, that thing with the long hose that has like the different massaging speeds to it that you just innocently hang up in your... That was originally a sex toy for women in a doctor's office, and they would like lay in this sort of bathtub thing and just have that massager like aimed at their lady parts, for however long they needed until their hysteria was taken care of. And so that was where that came from. Then they started selling them in catalogs for women to be able to use in their own home. They had the little pocket ones, they had ones that had like a little motor to it, and then like the little thing that looked like a finger, and just very interesting just very interesting little at-home cure for hysteria type. Like, Google this stuff. Google this. Just type in hysteria, treatments for hysteria in the 17 or 1800s, and you will just see so much stuff that you just didn't, you would not believe went on at that time, or ever. But anyway, eventually they took that off the market, because, or shall I say they took it out of catalogs, because, I mean, family members and children could look at these catalogs, and as the years went on, like, people kind of threw that ignorance blanket off of themselves and kind of opened their eyes to, okay, women are actual human beings with sexual organs that are designed for sexual pleasure. So this is actually a sexual thing and not necessarily a medical problem. Okay, we need to get this out of the eyes of the public. And so, not to say that vibrators were no longer made, obviously they were, because we have websites like AdamandEveToys.com. But then it was just made really, really taboo, because it's like, okay, this is for your sexual pleasure. This isn't a medical necessity for you, so, like, ew, this is gross. We don't want to hear about you doing this. Like, this is unladylike. This isn't what a proper young woman does. Like, really, boo? Really? I'm sorry. And so, to get back on point, I was watching these videos the other day, and I'm just thinking to myself, you know, part of why I should do a whole story time video on me losing my virginity at some point or another. But a big part of why I had sex in the first place at such a young age, because I originally wanted to wait until I was married. That was my plan. That was what I believed was right. And that was just, you know, I say I believed it was right, and then I fell in love. And then you start feeling certain things that you didn't feel before, didn't know that you could feel before, and just, you know, one thing leads to another. But anyway, a big part of why, of course, I loved him, and I had been in love with him for over a year, and all that, but unfortunately, long story short, he didn't love me. And my thought process at the time, even though I knew, like, I wasn't stupid. I knew that sex doesn't make you fall in love with someone. It can make you fall in love with a certain part of their body, but it ain't gonna do nothing for their heart. And so, I had this hope. This silly, crazy, insane, don't you dare hope for this kind of hope. That if I just went ahead and did what he was pushing me to try and do, maybe he would love me back. And that was a primary reason for it, but then there was also, of course, I mean, I'm human. He wasn't the only one wanting to do certain things, feeling certain parts of their body tingling. He was not alone in this, okay? I had that curiosity, like, well, everyone raves about how great sex is. And by this time, I had already been masturbating for years. I mean years, okay? People want to, you know, they want to say, well, what were you doing things like that young? Like, who taught you that? Ain't nobody had to show me nothing, okay? I knew what felt good when certain parts of my body were touched, okay? And if I had an itch, I scratched it. So, this wasn't anything new to me as far as, like, orgasms and sexual pleasure. I've been giving that to myself for years. But everyone raved about how great sex in general was. Hold that thought. Okay, sorry you guys. My phone was ringing and it was my wonderful fiance who has not had minutes in 24 hours, and we were going through withdrawal of each other, so I had to talk to him for a quick minute. Anyway, so what I was talking about, I remember now. I was talking about, I'm sorry, I'm having a brain fart moment. Okay, so yes, I had been giving myself sexual pleasure for years. Orgasms, masturbating, that was all normal to me, even though no one in my family talked about it. Like, my parents never even gave me the sex talk. Like, I had to put 2 and 2 together from the Discovery Health Channel, my encyclopedia, and diagrams of how the reproductive system worked on the internet. Like, that was how I figured out what sex was and where certain body parts went in. And so That was where I learned that, and I kind of had to figure out the rest from personal experience, if you know what I mean. But at this point in time, like, me and this guy that I was dating and about to lose my virginity to, we had known each other for over a year. Like I said, he was more of like the party, smoke, drink, do this, do that, you know, kind of scenario, and me not wanting that because, as I think I've said in other videos, I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I never have, I don't like the smell of any of it. It's just all sickening to me. So I didn't want that, but I really, truly, from the bottom of my heart, loved him. And I knew he could be better. But it was like that Beauty and the Beast mentality. Oh, if I just love him and if I stay with him and accept him, he'll change, he'll do this, he'll do that. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. In the case with my fiance and I, we both kind of had that Beauty and the Beast experience with each other, kind of switching off, taking turns from being the beauty to being the beast. So we had that with each other, so we had that balance. It wasn't just one person always putting up with the other's BS. It was both of us mutually putting up with each other's BS until we both figured out, okay, the BS needs to stop. Which, of course, we're both works in progress, but I digress. Anyway, back to the point. I get off the point so much, excuse me. If I was any more off point, I would need a knife sharpener. Anyway, so my mentality with this was, okay, everyone raves about how great sex is, how amazing it is. I mean, for Pete's sake, people get addicted to sex and have to go into like a sexual rehab because it's that good, I guess. And so I'm just sitting there thinking, what is this? Like, I know how much I love orgasms and I love taking care of my own needs. Like, what is it that makes it so much better with another person? And, I mean, of course there was that, like, fear and trepidation, sort of. Like, my friends would always tell me, the ones that had lost their virginity, like, it hurt, or they bled, or whatever the case was. Like, it was just a really awkward, painful experience for them. Suffice it to say, it did not go down like that with me. I don't know if they had just never done anything to or with themselves to get themselves used to what they like and what they don't like. Maybe that was what helped me. You know, with my first time, don't get me wrong, it hurt for the first couple minutes, but after that, it was just like, I'm not going to say any more because I'm an engaged woman and I'm not looking back at the past too much. But suffice it to say, if you have not yet lost your virginity and you're afraid it's going to hurt and it's going to be this horrible, bloody, massacre-looking experience, honey, don't, just take care of your own needs first, learn what you like, and your first time should be just fine. If not, absolutely freaking spectacular. But anyway, so this is the point I'm trying to make. This is my point. My point is, if I would have, not to say that I didn't take care of my own needs well enough, I feel like if I would have sort of had a little more access to, you know, sex toys or lube or different things like that and just gotten myself used to it, because if any of y'all have ever purchased a sex toy, it's so much more fulfilling than taking care of your own needs with the best tools that God ever gave us. It's just, it gives you a much more I keep making all these terrible puns, in-depth feeling for what sex is actually going to feel like, depending on what kind of toy you get. And I feel like if I would have sort of been able to explore that a little bit more, been able to talk openly, you know, with older women in my life about, you know, what does this feel like, what does that feel like, and all this, that, and to the third, I guess I probably would have, I can't say for sure what I would have done, because I know how much I loved that guy, and I know how determined I was to give it my absolute all and try to make it work, because it was one of those things that I knew wouldn't work, but I also knew if I didn't at least try, I would absolutely kick myself for the rest of my life. And I can honestly say, even though I really, truly, from the bottom of my heart, do wish I would have waited, I can rest my head on my pillow knowing that even though that relationship failed, it didn't last, I put everything, body, mind, soul, and spirit into that relationship that I could. I did everything I could to save it. I did everything I could to make it prosper. It just wasn't meant to be. But that's, again, a whole other video. Anyway, I just feel like if young girls nowadays, I'm not saying that young girls should be up on porno websites and buying 10,000 sex toys and shit like that, but what I am saying is you shouldn't be ashamed of it. Like, if you're a parent watching this, like, I know it's probably, like, appalling to think of your 14-year-old doing things, especially if she's a girl, you know, doing things with herself. But the way I think of it, would you rather her take care of her own needs or her go to someone else to take care of her needs? Like, not to say that one replaces the other, because it just doesn't. Like, there's certain times when, you know, for example, I absolutely love my fiance, I love our sex life, I love the way he and I do things, and there are moments when I really just want him, and, you know, my toys can just go out the window. But then there's also times where it's like, I don't feel like being romantic, I don't feel like putting hours into it, I don't feel like dressing up in cute little costumes, I just want to get mine and roll over and go to sleep, and that's where the toys can help. But, again, that's just me. I just feel like when I was that young, if I would have known, because until I was 13, I didn't even know that there was a word for what I was doing. I didn't even know that masturbation was actually a thing. I didn't know that that was something other people did. And so in a sense, you could say I felt very ashamed of it. Like, I felt like I was so weird that I was doing this. And like I said, I never even had my first kiss until I was 14, and it was with the guy that I lost my virginity to. I was not like, I didn't have promiscuous parents. Like, literally, my dad worked 14 hours a day, came home and crashed. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She was always at home with me. Very conservative. I was raised in church. No, nobody inappropriately touched me at my church. There was none of that. People have that misconception that if people start being, you know, expressing their sexuality very young, that someone must have sexually abused them. And I'm sorry, but I have to argue with you on that. Some people mature and blossom faster in that area of life than others. Some people just have a stronger instinct for certain things like that than others. And some people just have stronger desires in that area than others. And so that was my case. But I just felt so weird about it. And especially because, you know, sexuality and lust and thoughts like that were so, you know, being raised in church, that was so repressed. Not in every church is it like that, but in the churches that I went to at times, it was just very, like, it was a very, very bad thing. Like, you just weren't supposed to think like that. You weren't supposed to be doing things like that. And this is another thing. This is another thing I want to cover right here. People that are in church that I talk to, there's a young man that I talked to at one point. And he was a little bit older than me, about 6 years older than me, and we got into like a 2-hour-long debate on whether or not it was a sin to masturbate. As hilarious as that sounds. And now, we didn't grow up in one of those really, like, tight churches where you can't move and sway and clap your hands when the music's on. Like, we had a very liberal, like, praying in tongues, holy roller, if you will, like, all that, like, operating in the fivefold ministry, apostles, prophets, teachers, pastors, evangelists, all that going on in these churches. And so we were very used to, like, in that way, our church was very free, very liberal, if you will, not in the way of, like, promoting abortion and stuff like that, but just very free, very open. Like, you didn't have to put your really, really nice church clothes on if you didn't want to. You could just come in a t-shirt and jeans and just be yourself. It was nice in that way. But anyway, it was certain topics were very, So, we got into this debate, and the only scripture he could bring up to me was, I gotta find the exact thing, and a lot of people bring these two scriptures up. One was about this dude, I will look up, like, the verse and the section of it, where this guy, basically, in the Bible times, people, if a woman was married to a guy, and the guy died, that guy's brother, if he had a brother, or, like, any male relative, a cousin, a brother, whoever his next of kin was supposed to marry his wife. And they were supposed to produce children together to keep their family line going. And so, there's this woman, she had a husband died, brother stepped in. And that was like a God-ordained idea to preserve family. and to preserve, you know, where someone's inheritance was honestly supposed to go. And so this guy was supposed to go ahead and do his thing with this woman so that they would produce heirs. And they would do their thing, but instead of him planting his seed inside of her, so to speak, he would let his seed fall to the ground. And God struck him dead for that. People like to use that particular scripture and say that he was masturbating so that he wouldn't come into the woman and do his thing there. That is not what that scripture says. And that is not by any means what it means. There's a second scripture as well, and it's in the New Testament. This first one was in the Old Testament, this one's in the New Testament. And it says, men will be lovers of themselves. Really? Just really? God is so explicit in the Bible about what sexual practices are acceptable and what ones aren't. Like, he even goes into talking explicitly about bestiality in the Bible. Like, you're not supposed to have sex with animals. You're not supposed to, like, he's very explained. Why is he all of a sudden going to be all demure about it and say men will be lovers of themselves? Like, really? Especially in the book of Exodus is where I've seen a lot of the sexual laws and things of that nature that were set in place right after the Israelites got out of Egypt. There was like a whole, like, you're not supposed to have sex with any close relatives. No brothers, no sisters, no aunts, no uncles, no step-parents, no parents. None of that stuff. None of that's supposed to go down. You're not supposed to have sex with animals. Okay, I'm going to get hate for this one, but the Bible does say women are not to be with women, men are not to be with men. So, I'm not hating. I don't hate gay people. I'm not afraid of them. I've been I've laughed and cut up with and sat there and ate lunch with people that were gay. Like, I have friends that are bi, like, whatever. That's between them and God. But I'm just saying what the Bible says. So God is very explicit with what he says is permissible and what is not. I have not, in my 17 years of reading through the Bible and being in church and being in Bible study, I have never once found one verse that says you are not supposed to physically stimulate yourself to have an orgasm. I'm sorry. I just have not found it. Like, if I'm wrong, if any of y'all are like real hardcore Bible studiers and there is an explicit verse that says that, please let me know. Please leave it in the comments, but I have not found it. This whole topic is just so surrounded by shame and guilt and condemnation. Like, if God gave you the ability to scratch yourself when you itch, or to wrap a blanket around yourself when you're cold, or to feed yourself when you're hungry, why would you have a desire in another area of your body and you're not allowed to bring yourself relief there? Like, really? I just feel like it would be so much more beneficial for young ladies to educate themselves and to be educated that it's not a shameful thing. Your desires and your sexuality is not to be, it's not a bad thing. It's not a shameful thing. It's not something that you need to hide. You know, you don't need to walk around town with your hoo-ha hanging out or anything like that. Like, you cover yourself, metaphorically and physically speaking. You know, you cover yourself because you are valuable. Like, I'm not one that will walk out in a booty shorts and a belly shirt anymore. I used to do that in my much, much, much younger years, but I cover myself now more than I did before, and I don't always wear long skirts. I wear pants too. Like, I don't have a strict dress code, but for the most part I dress rather modest, just because the whole world doesn't need to see all that. Not because I'm ashamed of my body or my sexuality or anything like that, but because it's not the whole world's business. Like, I know, that's so hypocritical, making a masturbating video, well, not masturbating video, but like a video based on these topics on YouTube. But it's like, I'm not ashamed of it, but I don't need to, like, smash my sexual organs in people's faces like we've done throughout all of America. Like, every billboard you see, sex, sex, sex. That's all you see. And then because of that, in the church, it's so condemned, it's so repressed, it's a bad thing, this and that and to the third. Like, a lot of, don't get me wrong, a lot of churches, a lot of, you know, Christian groups and whatnot are becoming more like, this is something God created. God created these desires, he created sex, you know, it's a good thing, we need to talk about it more, you know, da-da-da-da. That's great, that's wonderful, and I applaud churches like that, it's amazing. But even in secular groups, even with the friends that I hung out with when I was much younger, there was so much hypocrisy, and there was so much, like, you would hear the guys talk, like it was just nothing. Like, they're just, oh yeah, I got up in the morning and chopped the morning wood, or choked the chicken, beat the hot dog, whatever they call it, that they're doing with themselves. Like, that's so common to hear. But for a woman to say, oh yeah, I woke up and, I don't even think we have an expression. Like, it's that rare to talk about. We don't, they've got choke the chicken, beat the hot dog, chop the morning, what do we have? Like, what? Comment below, give me some sayings on what we can call it when we take care of our needs, because we need a little nickname for it. Pet the kitty cat, I guess you could say. This is terrible. I suck at creating little names for things, but anyway, actually, in general I don't, but for this I do, because I guess I've never given it any thought. But anyway, this is just something that I wish my family and my friends would have been more open about. I wish that I would have had the knowledge then that I do now, so that I could have been there for my friends, and they wouldn't have had to feel so much shame and so much like they can't talk about this and that and the other. Like, it's just, it's normal. It's like breathing, it's like going to the bathroom, it's like taking a shower, it's a normal part of life. You don't need to feel ashamed for it. You don't need to hide it. Like, if you get toys, I would hide those and like keep them in your closet so that your parents don't like pass out when they walk in your room. Or your roommates or whoever you live with, like, you know. Now, granted, I'm saying all this and aiming it at young girls. Meanwhile, Adam and Eve doesn't let people who are under 18 order from them. But, like, literally you can walk into Walgreens and buy a vibrator. Like, I don't think they're gonna ID you for it. I don't know. Has that ever happened to you? If it has, leave it in the comments. You can go into Spencer's in the mall, if you guys have like a Spencer's, you know, that store with like it's like sprayed in graffiti writing for the name of the store, and they've got like all the novelty stuff. Like in the back of this, most of the Spencer's that I've been into, they have like a whole sex toy section back there that you can go in there and buy. And again, I've bought from there, and people say that I look exceptionally young, like younger than I actually am. I'm 20 years old and people have mistaken me for being like 15, and nobody's ever ID'd me for buying things of that nature. But like, if you do happen to get I would keep it put up. But when I say don't hide it, I don't mean like leave your sex toys out on the coffee table. I mean, I've heard of some people using them as displays because they do have like the really pretty glass ones, but I'm getting off into a whole other topic here. Anyway, this is just something that's been kind of weighing on me for a while, and it just irks me that this is something we don't talk about in society. Like, we don't, that's why it's so intriguing to people. Like, the sex industry and stripping and prostitution and all that is so intriguing to people. One of the reasons why. Because it's so taboo. It's so untouched. It's so not talked about. Especially if you grew up in a very conservative home that has a lot of really good morals and values. Unfortunately, along with those morals and values probably came a certain degree of shame or guilt for your sexual desires. And so people see that when they get older, like when they get college age, and they're just like, wow, I really, you know, I think I'd really like to try this. Like, it's, you know, it's so taboo. It's like so something that I was never allowed to touch before, but now I can because I'm grown up and I'm out of mommy and daddy's house. Or, you know, maybe you're still in mommy and daddy's house, but you can still do whatever you want because you're like over 18 now. And people get into that, and sometimes they never get back out, and they can come down with horrible, like, all kinds of STDs, unplanned pregnancies. The unplanned pregnancies can lead to abortions, and then that leads to more shame and guilt, and there's just so much that could have been avoided if sex wasn't such a Like, if we didn't make this huge thing out of it, yes, it's a wonderful, beautiful design that God made for a man and a woman, and to bond them in holy matrimony and all that sort of thing. That's great. It's also kind of like the difference between sitting down eating like your normal meal every day, like your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and the little snacks and desserts that you have in between. Okay, so sex itself was designed to be, you know, a way to bond a man and a woman and to repopulate the earth. But we have our moments in between where maybe hubby is out at work or on a business trip, and we don't want to be one of those people to have to bring a call boy into the home, okay? We don't want to do all of that. We want to scratch our own itch, so to speak. So we take care of our own needs. It's not a big deal. It's not something to be ashamed of. You don't need to turn 50 shades of red if you're going and buying a sex toy. Like, it's no different than going out buying a piece of cake, or going out buying some gym shorts to go out and run in, or what. It's a normal part of life, okay? It's very normal. It's very a basic primal human need and desire. It's normal. And that is basically what I wanted to tell you guys. And I'm sorry if any of this made anybody uncomfortable or whatever, but I did warn you ahead of time. If sexual things make you uncomfortable, click off of this video. But anyway, I will leave links to all the stuff that I said, or at least I will try. I'm terrible at that. Like, I'll tell you guys I'm going to leave links and then I don't. But if I don't, and there's really a specific one that you wanted a link to, like Sarah's channel, Trish's channel, whatever, I can just, I'll look into it specifically. But anyway, I will talk to you guys later in the next video. I hope you really enjoyed this one. If you want to hear more on these sort of like unspoken topics, things that people don't really talk about a whole lot, by all means leave me a comment and let me know what you'd like to hear about, and I will do my best to answer your questions or respond to your requests as quickly as possible, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.